One agent is good, and a team of agents, each with its own role, collaborating to solve a problem too big for any one of them, is something else entirely. That's multi-agent orchestration. This is one of the most exciting capabilities in AI today. I'm Rob Folkrod, lead technical trainer at Microsoft, and this is the last session in topic 2 where we'll cover orchestrating a multi-agent solution using the Microsoft Agent Framework. We'll review the agent framework, then dig into agent orchestration and walk through a number of different patterns that you have in your toolbox. Let's bring it all together. So when we were talking about workflows a couple of sessions ago, we saw the idea of various patterns. And those patterns were implemented for us inside of the Foundry workflow system. But we may also need the capability and the flexibility to do those purely in our own code base, in our own agentic systems, outside of the workflow system in Foundry. So one of the capabilities that we pulled in from AutoGen when semantic kernel and AutoGen were melded together was we got a lot of the capabilities that AutoGen built in terms of multi-agent orchestration. Now, some of these patterns we have seen before, so we'll go through them relatively quickly, but some of them are a little bit newer, and we'll see what we can, what else is inside of Agent Framework. So first, a sequential orchestration. This was one of the basics that we saw in workflow. It's the same here. We get the ability to create one agent and then from that agent automatically pass its output, right? That the output from one agent becomes the input into agent number 2, and we can move along the way. So here they're talking about this idea of having a summarizer. Summarizer will pass in a large document of some kind. The summarizer will then condense that. Potentially agent number 2 translates that. And then agent number 3 could build a Q&A off of the system. Right. Each of those inputs is required to be completed before we can move to the next. Right. Concurrent orchestration, for each, fan out. There's a number of different names for something like this. But in a scenario, input is passed in, and it is determined that we can handle some of those in parallel. So instead of having to wait and pass them all here and move kind of this direction, we know that we can farm out one piece to one direction, let it come together, and then when we are completed, merge all of those together. The parallelism allows us to optimize for getting things done much more quickly. But we also have what's known as handoff orchestration. In handoff orchestration, we're going to have agents that are specializing in a particular task. But at the beginning of the input, we don't necessarily know the path through which we're going to travel. Right? If I go back a sec here, we know the path. When this starts, we know what this path is going to be. We know that we're going to come in here and it's going to branch off 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't necessarily know how many, but we know that we're going to branch off. We're going to come together in the collector and we're going to finish. Here we know we're going one node, the next, the third. It's a very, very predictable order. But when we're looking at the handoff orchestration, we will typically have a series of tasks that each one is good at. So we may have a general support that gets this idea and says, oh gosh, to answer this question, I know my friend over here in billing, this agent over here in billing, is the one that handles this one. So we will delegate it that direction. But we don't know that that's coming until input comes in. Right? And this is similar to what we saw in our workflow orchestration when we branched off and said, okay, billing is going to handle, it's going to be handled by a human being, and these two sections can be handled by an agent. And that was kind of a similar idea But here it might be the agent is making that decision and not necessarily an if statement that we're putting together that's making it for us. Right. So one agent transfers control, says, okay, I know whom the agents are around me, and I will hand off to that particular agent. It's typically a pretty linear path through. Once we've done that handoff, we're not often kind of looping back again and again and again, but we're finding out kind of who can handle that, and we go. But then we can up the complexity just a little bit more. And there's one called a group chat orchestration. And I'm sure in your mind, you now have a vision of a bunch of agents sitting on a chat together, trying to figure something out. And it's not quite what we're seeing here. We do have kind of an ordered process in which only one agent typically is going to be running at a time in something like this. But we're going to have a group chat manager, and that group chat manager is going to get in a particular response and then start handing that off to maybe a marketing agent, an engineering agent, a finance agent. Maybe we're doing some sort of brainstorming in here, and then they pass it back. Their input comes back, and we say, thank you for your contribution. And then maybe we hand that off again. We continue in this process. Now that we've got kind of a marketing angle, let's hand that off to engineering to get some opinion on it. The manager decides who's going next, looks at the results, and then makes those decisions again and again. And all the responses are coming back into the same middle chat. So all of these agents have access to the entire chat all along the way. So things aren't left behind. It's not like we're starting a new conversation and the engineering agent doesn't know what went before. It's all part of that same conversation. And then one of the interesting things that was in the autogen realm was something called magnetic orchestration. And magnetic orchestration is really that group chat, but one generation past, where we're going to have an orchestrator in there, and the sophistication of the orchestrator is a little bit higher. Right? And typically in here, again, we don't have a fixed execution order, but the agents in here are going to self-organize. That the orchestrator is a little bit wiser about how to handle these things, and maybe a very complicated task comes in. So imagine a scenario where we have some sort of AI on-call engineer, and there is some sort of technical issue, right? A server went down. Okay, so the issue may be then brought to the orchestrator. Server's down. There's a lot of directions that we need to go to start troubleshooting. So the orchestrator will start looking at, well, what are the agents that I have? Who are the ones that I have? And based upon this problem, who am I going to send out? So the first thing we may have is maybe have a connectivity. Like, can we get there? And an agent is responsible for making the appropriate calls and saying, are we getting 404s? Are we getting no response? Are we getting 500s? Let's check that connectivity. Once that information has been gathered and brought into the ledger, then a second decision can be made based upon the results of that first. And so maybe then a logging agent goes out there and starts retrieving the logs from that particular server, from that web app, whatever it happens to be. They start chewing through the logs. That logging agent starts finding the things that might be important and puts those back on the ledger. Then that orchestrator agent is going further. Right? And so these are these areas where there are very complicated solutions or problems where we don't necessarily know the order and the path that we're going to be going until we make it through. One of the very sophisticated orchestrations that, again, the autogen folks put together has been brought into our realm here inside of the agent framework. but we need to check this out. So let's take a look at an example. All right, so in this exercise, you all will create an agent, and here we're going to start simple. We're going to use that sequential orchestration so that you are moving just from one to the second to the third, and just give it a run. It'll be a pretty straightforward exercise. So for starters, as we have seen a lot, we are in Foundry. We do have a deployed project. That deployed project does have a model, and we have taken, I believe I've taken, let me just double check here, that I have taken the project endpoint, and I have copied that into the environment variable. I have. Good. Let me just double check to make sure I've got the right one here. Life is good. So here we've got the two pieces, our project endpoint and our model deployment name. Now when we swing into agents, we've got much of what we've had up to this point. We're bringing in the agent framework, but most importantly, we're now bringing in this case, the sequential builder. This is from agent frameworks.orchestration. So earlier we just talked about a series of different orchestration types. We're going to start right now with kind of the simple one of sequential builder. Okay. Then we are setting up a series of instructions. This will be 3 separate agents. There will be a summarizer, a classifier, and an actions. And each one has its own set of individual instructions. You can see them right here. Right? Summarizer, we want one short sentence. The classifier, is this positive, negative, or is it a feature request? And then actions, based upon the summary and the classification, suggest another action, for example. And they give several examples are then given. So those will be the 3 agents that we will come to in sequence. We then are building our CLI credential. We saw that one in the last section. And we are building the Azure AI agent client, passing in the credential and saying we've got a chat client. Then we're building those 3 agents. So chat client as agent, nice little helper function there. As agent, instructions and name. As agent, our classifier, and as agent, our actions. So currently we have 3 agents floating in the abyss. There's no real sequence yet. We have intent, but we don't have any real organization. Then we're going to, in this example here, we're going to hard code some feedback. You can imagine that we would be passing in the feedback on the regular here, but right now we're just going to hard code. I use the dashboard every day to monitor metrics. Works well overall. But when I'm working late, the bright screen is really harsh on my eyes. I get you. I'm usually a dark screen guy, but for demos, I have been in bright screens all day. I feel it. If you have added a dark mode option, it would make the experience much more comfortable. Okay, so that's the feedback that's going to be passed in. Now, instead of those agents floating in the abyss, we are going to bring in the sequential builder. Sequential builder takes in a participant's argument with an array, an ordered list here, summarizer, classifier, action, and then we call out build. It then constructs the order. The outputs are going to be then a list of messages. So the message class, this is brought in our agent framework. This is simply the responses, the messages that are coming back. And we call out to workflow run. So workflow run, making an async call in there for each one of the events that are going to pop up. If the event is output, then cast that as a message and append that into our list of outputs. Finally, at the end, if we've got anything decent in there, enumerate through and pop up the messages themselves. So again, the key parts here, the takeaway, the important pieces here are that we have built ourselves 3 agents. These agents could have been already on the server. We've seen that inside of Foundry, many agents already, where we could have brought in complex, interesting agents. Here we're just 1, 2, and 3. And then we put those together in our sequential builder and our workflow.run. Let's see if we are in good shape. Let's open up the terminal here, and we want Python and agents plural. Give this a run. And take a look at the results here. We have each of those. So we've got the initial user feedback that we're passing in. Then our summarizer agent said, hey, customer is requesting a dark mode option for comfortable late night use. The classifier looks at that and says, that is indeed a feature request. And the action agent said, got it. So customer requests this. Let's log that as an enhancement for backlog. Right? Each one of those agents ran in turn. What's the first step in the Microsoft Agent Framework Unified Orchestration Workflow? First thing you have to do is define those agents and describe their capabilities. Right. For brainstorming and collaborative problem solving among multiple agents, which orchestration pattern is most suitable? Right. And you could have gone a couple of ways here. It would have made the group chat makes a ton of sense here. Magnetic, maybe, depending upon the complexity. So if you said magnetic, you're maybe not completely wrong. You're maybe thinking of a more complicated problem. Could go either way on that one, but we'll go with group chat first. All right. In here, we've taken a look at the various orchestrations that are available to us inside of the Microsoft Agent Framework. We saw that there are concurrent orchestrations so that we could fan out. We saw sequential as an option. And we saw three increasingly complicated items with things like handoff and group chat and magnetic. In this session, we orchestrated agents into real teams. We reviewed the Microsoft Agent Framework, understood orchestrations, and worked through concurrent, sequential, group chat, handoff, and magnetic patterns, and developed a multi-agent solution along the way. That wraps topic 2. We've gone from our very first Foundry agent all the way to multi-agent orchestrations. We've added custom tools and MCP tools, grounded our agents in real knowledge with Foundry IQ, and published them to Microsoft 365. That's a complete agent development skill set. Thanks for participating in this Develop AI Apps and Agents on Azure. I hope you've enjoyed learning about building and integrating and orchestrating AI agents on Azure as much as I enjoyed presenting the concepts and walking you through the live demos. I encourage you to remain curious and continue exploring new capabilities. That's how you'll keep staying relevant. There are many ways to continue in your learning journey, and I invite you to search for your next favorite topic on Microsoft Learn at aka.ms/learn.